Gibson.
Madam Deputy Chair, we in the SNP support the rollout of smart meters, but it is essential that maximising consumer and environmental protections lie at the heart of any strategy to do so.
Hear, hear.
It is empowering for consumers to have near real-time information on their energy consumption to help them control and manage their use of energy and in turn save money and reduce emissions. If rollout is effective and well managed, there are obvious benefits to consumers. Nearly 8 in 10 people with a smart meter would recommend one to others, and the same number with a smart meter say they have taken steps to reduce their energy consumption. Those with an in-home display model particularly feel they have a much better idea of what they are spending on energy and check it regularly. If this new technology helps consumers feel that having this in their homes is helping them to exercise better control over energy consumption and helps them to be better informed about their energy use with greater control over their bills, then of course that must be welcomed. We've heard in previous speeches about switching suppliers. I'd like to say right at the outset that switching suppliers has limited effect. We know because of the research that's been done that the people who tend to switch tend to be those who are better off. They switch and save money. But this is not having a sufficient impact on the lowest income households, those who are most in danger of fuel poverty, who find it much more difficult to switch suppliers. And we often hear that smart meters are free to consumers. They are not. They are paid for through energy bills. Every household will ultimately pay for the new meter rollout via their bills. And it's important that consumers understand that having a smart meter is a choice. And I know that trading standards have expressed real concerns that data from Citizens Advice suggests that consumers are not being told that they can, if they choose to, refuse a smart meter. Similarly,
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady for giving way. And I think it's a really important point here about consumers from the lowest demographic households. And that's the point about, given that there are all these different tariffs that the different companies have, why don't either the government or those companies themselves actually say, we'll stop the responsibility being on you to decide which is the best tariff for you. We've got all this data, and what we will do is at the end of every quarter, we'll look at your bill and we'll tell you which would have been the best tariff, and we'll put you onto that tariff. So you always save the money without having to do all the work yourself. The companies now should have the information to better do that.
Well, what the Honourable Gentleman has said sounds eminently sensible. The problem is that the better off and the most well-informed people are actually switching and saving, and that is being subsidised by the people who are unable to switch and save because they don't feel up to the task. The poorest households are actually subsidising the most affluent households who have the ability and the expertise to switch and save, and I think that's a real issue that has to be addressed. Similarly, and it's been mentioned before, those on prepayment meters, the poorest households in our communities, must have access to smart meters if that is something that they choose to do. It's important that as part of this process, the government's regulatory framework establishes clearly the rights and obligations of all aspects of smart metering design, development, installation and operation, as well as monitoring and reporting. Customers must be reassured and continue to be reassured that their data and security are robustly protected in the course of the smart meter rollout. Now, there has been concerning evidence that the smart meter rollout is being installed before its requirements as an internet-connected energy system have been fully determined. And the UK Government must do everything in its power to ensure that consumers have protection amid the rollout. There were disturbing reports in March of last year in the Financial Times of GCHQ intervening in smart meter security, claiming that the agency had discovered glaring loopholes in meter designs. And of course, this has caused some alarm, and such concerns must be fully addressed. And there must be concern that the plan to install smart meters in every home by 2020 doesn't leave consumers out of pocket. The question must be asked as to whether the cost of this rollout will be borne by all energy consumers. And it's worth pointing out that successful operation of smart meters can also be a postcode lottery. If you live in an area with a poor mobile signal, there's a real chance that your smart meter won't work. So if we are applauding the merits of smart meters, then this has to be borne in mind. Digital inclusion matters. Almost 100,000 fewer households were in fuel poverty in 2015 compared to the previous year in Scotland, but there is still much more to be done. And that's why in Scotland, the Scottish Government has commissioned a review of the very definition of fuel poverty, and that's due to be completed next year, and it's to inform a new fuel poverty strategy, which will be followed up by a Warm Homes Bill. There has to be a focus on those who are in most need of help to heat their homes.
I'm grateful for the lady giving way. I remember the Scottish Government previously reviewed the definition of fuel poverty and came up with a definition which I thought wasn't very good. In the England and Wales we reviewed it and came up with a policy which got cross-party consensus. Can I urge her to go back to Edinburgh and suggest she looks at the fuel poverty definition that we've produced here in Westminster?
Well, the honourable gentleman will know, and I am a great advocate, where something is being done well, others should learn from it. And if something has been done well in Westminster, then there is no difficulty about the Scottish Government learning from that. I only wish, I say to the honourable gentleman, I only wish that that arrangement was reciprocal. Those who are we need to be mindful of those who are most in need of help to heat their homes. And this must involve a joined-up approach, since a wide range of policy areas are encompassed by any attempts to tackle fuel poverty. Citizens Advice has stated that consumers in vulnerable situations could miss out on the potential benefits of the £11 billion smart meter rollout, which they will be helping to fund through their energy bills. And such risks may relate directly to the installation and/or the ability of these households to benefit from the smart meter system. But I have to say, Mr Deputy Chair, it has to be said that generations of British consumers have been locked into a risky and expensive project by the UK's subsidy deal for a new nuclear power station at Hinkley Point in Somerset. This is not my assessment. This is the assessment of the National Audit Office. Under the terms of the 35-year contract, EDF is guaranteed a price of £92.50 per megawatt hour it generates, twice the wholesale price. And the subsidy will be paid through energy bills, which the government's own figures estimates will translate to a £10 to £15 chunk of the average household bill by 2030. And I don't want to revisit or rehearse last week's debate, but I should also point out at this juncture that the National Audit Office has also pointed out, worryingly, that withdrawal from Euratom might be interpreted as a change of law, resulting in an adjustment of the £92.50 price promised to EDF, or even trigger a one-off payment for EDF through a compensation clause in the contract. So I'll just leave that there for the Minister to consider in his own time. But the fact is that for EDF, being guaranteed 3 times today's price for electricity for 35 years. Former Conservative Energy Secretary Lord Howell has criticised the Hinkley deal, among many others, as one of the worst deals ever for British consumers, and industry has protested against endless government guarantees for risk-free returns to the investors. And when Hinkley has been completed, we now know that several renewable alternatives will be cheaper. So when it comes to helping consumers keep their bills down, it's hard to see how the white elephant that is Hinkley Point does so. And perhaps that's why it's easy to understand why I'm so concerned about consumer protection, not always necessarily being at the heart of the government's thinking. So, while I wish to put on record my welcoming of the government's movement on the price cap, the price cap, of course, is welcome. We still have a huge public subsidy for the energy from Hinkley Point from the taxpayer. So it seems like we're taking with one hand and giving with the other. Every household needs and deserves a safe, affordable energy supply. The government strategy must be clear, and what is best for consumers must lie at the heart of the entire process. In contrast, in Scotland, minimum energy efficiency standards will be developed and announced in the private rented sector, with consultations on how owner-occupiers can improve the energy efficiency of their homes with financial incentives. Ultimately, this bill must be about empowering consumers and delivering better, smarter and cheaper ways to heat our homes. Smart meters are a part of that, but it must deliver for all, especially our vulnerable consumers, and in a way where data is secure and protected. The environmental benefits, of course, are also important. So we support this bill, but we do have reservations, as I've outlined to the Minister, and we urge the Government to ensure that these important elements lie at the heart of these measures.
Hear, hear, hear.